On AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560, The Answer.
AM 560, The Answer. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Chris Kroc in for Dan Proft. Dan's back on Monday. You can follow me on social media at Chris Kroc Show. That's at Chris Kroc Show, ChrisKrok. John Lott. This is real fascinating. I've read about 3 of his articles that have come out recently. He is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, former senior advisor for research and statistics at the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Legal Policy, and author of Gun Control, Myths and More Guns, Less Crime. Now, John, it was very fascinating reading some of these columns because some of the things I thought you dispelled. I am a proud gun owner. Intentionally went out and got myself my AR-15 because obviously the left wants to take it away from me. I conceal carry as much as possible wherever I go. And first of all, thanks for joining us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
We're going to get into the gun stuff in just a moment and also the death penalty. I love what you said about Brian Koberger and some other people. I totally agree with you on that. But let's start with this. Illegals, crime rates of illegals versus you and me. The Cato Institute, I was surprised, but I haven't read much of their stuff or anything for years. But I was totally surprised to see that they are absolutely falsely reporting stuff, or at least have their head up their butt when it comes to this. Tell me what the real truth is on the numbers of illegals committing crimes versus us. And let me put this in real fast too. You shared this in your column. It's crazy. Maricopa County illegals committed almost 22% of felonies sentenced in Maricopa County Supreme Court, but yet the Mexican nationals also accounted for 13% of inmates in the state prison system, 142% more likely to be convicted of a crime than other Arizonans with these illegals. This is insane. Tell me about these numbers and what the truth is.
Right. Well, unfortunately, the media doesn't do a very good job of explaining these things. Cato puts out these studies where they claim that illegals commit crimes at relatively low rates compared to the U.S. population. And they base it on this America Community Survey by the Commerce Department, which is a truly massive survey. They survey about 3.5 million people each year. And they even survey people who are in prison, and they ask them whether they're illegals or not, and they look at their share of the prison population. The problem is that you can't look at that because if you're an illegal, you can be deported anyway. And if you're arrested, many illegals are deported immediately after arrest. Other illegals may be prosecuted and convicted and then deported as soon as they're convicted. And even if they end up serving some time in prison, they can be deported and are frequently deported while they're serving their prison term. So if I have 2 people who commit a robbery and both of them get sentenced to 4 years in prison, one's an illegal and one's an American citizen, the illegal may only be there for 3 months or 6 months of the 4-year term. Well, guess what? Then they're going to be very underrepresented in terms of their share of the prison population that are there. And you got to adjust for it. And Cato, unfortunately, refuses to mention those types of problems in their data. And the media, which, a place from the New York Times or Washington Post that goes and reports on these numbers, either doesn't know or doesn't care about trying to delve into whether those numbers make sense. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of places that go and collect this data. But, even the Biden administration last year put out information on the rate of crime, criminal backgrounds for so-called non-detained individuals. 7.4 million non-detained individuals have been released into the country, illegals who were released. Of those, the Biden administration acknowledged that 662,000 of them had criminal records. Now, the problem is that even that is a big underestimate, even that 9%, for a couple reasons. One is virtually all those non-detained individuals were individuals who voluntarily turned themselves in at the border. So they're probably not the ones that you should be most concerned about. We had over 2 million so-called gotaways, people that we saw coming across the border but we didn't catch. And then we had millions more that we never even saw come across the border, those that would pay the cartels extra money in order to avoid having to deal with the border patrols. Those are the ones that probably are much more dangerous. And on top of that, even the ones that did turn themselves in, you had many countries, like Venezuela, for example, that refused to provide data to us on whether their illegals that were in our country had criminal backgrounds. So, that 9% is pretty bad. I mean, it included 13,000 who had been convicted of murders in their home countries, plus a couple thousand more that had been charged but had escaped their country in order to avoid punishment. And we can go through other data, but it's pretty clear that illegals commit crimes and have committed crimes at high rates compared to U.S. citizens.
John Lott, president of Crime Prevention Research Center, former senior advisor for research and statistics at the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Legal Policy, and author of Gun Control Myths, More Guns, Less Crime. Let's shift into the death penalty, because two things. I could not agree with you more. I've been going nuts on this with each one of these cases, particularly, actually, really with Brian Koberger. Really, he was too afraid of the death penalty. That's why he copped a plea. These people are cowards, and they are terrified of being put to death. And I think it's the same way with, for example, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the head of the 9/11 attacks. But you also cite the murderer in that horrific Walmart shooting in El Paso, racially motivated, who murdered 23 people. The crazed guy who killed 12 and injured 70 at the Aurora, Colorado theater shooting. The guy who shot and killed 6 and injured 13 when Gabrielle Giffords was hit from him. Dylan Roof, that sick, satanic man who killed 9 at the Charleston church, and the Parkland shooter as well. So here's what I have been saying for years, and you're the expert, not me. The excuse that the left uses against the death penalty, which I'm totally for, is that it doesn't cause recidivism. It doesn't stop people from reoffending, right, or scare people away. It doesn't also, it costs more because the appeals process takes a long, long time and such. But I have advocated saying, thinking that was accurate, that the costs of the death penalty are higher than they would be if you just put them in jail, and that it doesn't stop people from committing murders. And I'll be interested to hear what you say, but I think the Brian Kobergers of the world wouldn't be stopped by the prospect of a death penalty. But I think once they're charged and stuff, they are then terrified of it. So what do you say to this? Because based on what you say, it looks like that's not true, that it might be cheaper and it might deter criminals. But regardless, I don't care. Is my point, too. But talk to me about this. What's the truth on this?
Right. Well, there are multiple issues as you raise. One is just how do these killers view the threat of the death penalty versus life in prison? And what you find time after time, they beg for plea bargains in order to go and avoid the death penalty. So that at least tells you something. Obviously They still committed the crime, but at least gives you some information there on, are they more afraid of the death penalty than life in prison? And that means at least maybe for some of these killers or some would-be killers, the threat of the death penalty stopped them from committing the crime to begin with. But, with regard to saving money, if Koberger had gone through the trial, you've been talking about a trial that could be a month or more. There would have been huge costs on the part of the state, as well as picking up his costs. Often the government has to pick up the defense costs for the murderer that's there. But they've avoided all those costs in this case, and plus he's agreed to no appeals in the future for his thing. And so the threat of the death penalty, even if you don't actually use it, the threat there causes these guys to agree to plea bargains, and you save lots of legal costs that are there, and that's something that just is ignored and not talked about at all. And so, it's are there costly appeals that opponents of the death penalty impose for those that do get sentenced to death? Yeah, but it has to be weighed against the other legal costs that you save thereby having it so that these other people beg to avoid the death penalty.
And I wanted to mention something else too. That my strong, unwavering opinion on the death penalty is that it is justice. It is not revenge. It is not to save money. It is not to cause others to think about it. It is because that is the sober justice that we have voted in for the people of our state, wherever it is, or the country, to decide and give that penalty if need be. Not revenge, not for money, not for this, but because it's the proper justice. I wanted to ask you this. Go ahead. Well, go ahead. We have a minute, kind of a minute and a half left. Yeah.
I understand. I guess, I can't really, I try to look at things I can measure.
Right.
One thing you see is that there's a lot of academic research that shows that the death penalty actually saves lives. It reduces the number of murders that are there. Each execution, you find you reduce the number of murders by between 8 and 16, depending upon the study that you look at. And so, those are things you don't see, clearly.
Right.
It's not like but it's important. And you have to attach a big value to that when you're talking about these other costs.
Here's one last question I want to sneak in. Your article or column in Real Clear Politics, AI chatbots rely on sources with clear biases. This is so wild. You go back and forth with Grok, and Grok keeps telling you that handguns don't make us safe, or guns don't make us safer with protection and such, and you nail it time and time again until it finally will start acquiesce to the truth, which is what you keep fighting it with. Here's the problem I have, and I want your comments on this. We don't have enough people like you to do this. And we have so many, to fight with the Grok to change his mind, to fill it with facts. And we have so many ignorant people that will use this and not know that the bias is happening.
Right. Look, people who use things like Google News Search probably have ideas about the biases that exist on these things. Because the people who program these things weight certain types of information sources more heavily than others. So when you do a Google News search, you'll see articles from the New York Times and Washington Post come up at the top. Anything that might be a more conservative source, like the New York Post or whatever, may be buried, on page 5 or something like that. Well, these AI programs also weight different types of information there. And I'll give you one example. Last year, we asked the 20 leading AI chatbots questions about crime and gun control. We asked them questions like, do higher arrest rates and conviction rates deter crime? And none of the AI chatbots agreed with that. All of them said that they disagreed. 10 of them said they strongly disagreed that higher arrest rates and higher conviction rates deterred some crime. And the other half just disagreed, not strongly disagreed, but just disagreed. And, I look at that, and they had similar answers to many other questions that were there that were similar. You kind of ask yourself, to me, it's pretty obvious. If you want to reduce crime, you make it risky for criminals to commit crime. You make, higher arrest rates, higher conviction rates. But, it just gives you an idea of how left-leaning the people who program these AI chatbots are. And I agree with you. Students are using them to write their papers in college. You have, and the thing is, I write in this area. I write academic papers, and so when the AI chatbot Grok was kind of misdescribing research there, claiming that the studies, had done different things than they actually had, I was able to go and push back. But even when you could admit it, I was talking to an expert in AI the other night, and he said that they're programmed at some point just to agree with you. But if you were to go and ask them the same initial question again, they'd give you the old answer even after they had agreed with you.
John, this is wild. I wish we had more of you to continue to fight this. I'm grateful for your work, and I appreciate you very much for everything you do to spread the truth. And with research, we need you, people like you, a lot more. Thank you for your time this morning, sir.
Thank you. People can find more at our website at crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org. But thank you.
Thank you, John. Have a great day. All right, coming up next, Open Mic Friday. We go nuts. We have fun. Call in right now. Lines wide open. 312-642-5600. Open